ecology. So they were very interdisciplinary by nature, and that's how I eventually found a home in public health, because it's also an applied and interdisciplinary field. I spent 12 years out of the academy, though. Actually, is the cursor working too? Yay! So we didn't miss much. That's my daughter.
Lynn, quick question. I was wondering, does everyone know what reproductive justice is?
But I'm going to explain that.
Wonderful.
That's what a lot of my talk is about.
Great.
So again, probably about here. I moved to New York because I got married. I met my husband in graduate school. My mother thought it was the worst thing I could do was to get married before finishing my degree, because in my family, I come from a family where education was highly valued as something for women to have, to be independent of men. So that's a whole long story that I'm actually have written about in a forthcoming autoethnography, if you will. 4 generations of reproductive justice, 4 generations of motherhood in my own family through a reproductive justice lens. I ended up in New York at the height of the HIV epidemic, while my own brother was living with HIV, and wanted to do something about that, so I got involved in a research study looking at fertility decisions around HIV in women in Brooklyn, and then that got me a job coordinating services for the State Department of Health. I monitored a lot of contracts of programs that were doing some of the frontline work around the early period of the HIV epidemic in New York City. From there, I was directing a program for substance-using moms and their children in Harlem to keep children with their mothers rather than separate them by providing treatment as opposed to punishment. And those programs, there were 20 of them funded in New York City at that time. At the height of the crack epidemic, there was concern about border babies, children being kept in hospitals, and the only reason they were being kept in the hospitals not because they were physiologically ill, but because their mothers had social needs. So the whole concept of the program was that rather than remove those children, separate them from their mothers, provide support and care. And we did that, and it was wonderful, and it worked for as long as it lasted. Because politics intervened, and somebody decided that maybe we shouldn't be helping these women. And you can imagine there was a lot of hype around crack babies, and also demonizing of their mothers for transferring illicit substances to them. And I'll get back to that in a moment as well. So just to give you, I was doing a lot of that when that program got defunded. I decided to go hang out in the academy. I did have a degree, and people have been asking me. I said, I don't want to be in the academy. I want to be out there doing stuff. And so that's part and parcel of why I largely identify as a scholar activist, because I tie my scholarship to my activism, and also other ways of changing the conditions that I care most about. So I've been doing research on youth violence, intimate partner violence. I've been really interested in the intersections, if you will, of race, class, and gender in a variety of ways that impact on health. And I am currently a lead consultant to the New York State Department of Health by virtue of 2 of my former students in public health who were interning there, and determined that maybe I should talk to them about reproductive justice. And they gave me an opportunity. I went and did a staff retreat that led to a brown bag invitation of the Commissioner of Health, Dr. Mary Bassett, which led to me being this consultant on this incredible project that's underway, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that, where they've actually decided to integrate a reproductive justice, a sexual and reproductive justice framework into all of their work, which is quite something. And then I've been on the management circle of Sister Song, which is a collective of, it's the Sister Song Reproductive Justice Collective. It's a collective of about many member organizations across the country, of women of color, indigenous-led organizations fighting for reproductive justice. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm sorry to go on so long, but my story is part of my talking to you about reproductive justice. So what is reproductive justice? It actually began in 1994. There's a group of black women who were who gathered in Chicago, and it was around the time of the first healthcare reform discussions by the then, which I thought was going to be the first of 2 Clinton administrations. And there's this also significant meeting at that time in Cairo, Egypt, called the International Conference on Population and Development. And it was around that time in having these discussions that many women of color, and in particular this group of black women, felt that that discussion did not speak to their needs specifically. Many of them were facing health issues that maybe did not impact other groups of women, and they wanted to have a larger voice and say in determining what some of those outcomes might be. So it goes back to your question about where does intersectionality lie in the healthcare debate. It's been with us for some time. So after much organizing, they named themselves Women of African Descent for Reproductive Justice, and that was when the term was first born in 1994, about 23 years ago, right? I have to check what year we're in sometimes. But it would not be until about 2003 when a group, when there was a convened by Sister Song, that it would become widely used as an organizing framework. And please note that sometimes I'll say reproductive justice and sometimes I'll say sexual and reproductive justice. I call it reproductive justice to stay true to its origins, and then I say SRJ to speak to its evolution. So it's introduced, but before I further define what reproductive justice is, I want to begin with talking about what reproductive oppression is, or what sexual and reproductive oppression is. So the women who were a part of Sister Song were looking for a way to, they were looking for a way to really explain that, that we had these experiences that were unique to groups that are most marginalized in society. And it was thought that reproductive oppression is the control and exploitation of our bodies, our sexuality, our labor and reproduction, and being specifically focusing on cis and trans women and girls. Now, the trans part was not always there, so women and girls were often referred to as the focus that was needed, and that's again part of the evolution of thinking about reproductive oppression. But this regulation of our bodies was thought to be ways of imperiling and controlling entire communities. And it can involve multiple systems of oppression, not just gender, but also ability and race and class and our sexuality and our age and our immigration status. So there are several examples, both currently and historically, and I can't touch on all of them. But I think of, because the group that first talked about this were referring to their own history, that they do document the forced breeding and medical experimentation on enslaved women of African descent, and that's important language to refer to people not as slaves but as enslaved people. It was the forced removal of children from their families, whether we were talking about Native American children who were forced into boarding schools in order to remove the Indian out of them or socialize the Indian out of them. But it's also up to thinking about the removal of children from their homes through the child welfare systems and how that became racialized over time. And there was a study before the family rehabilitation program that I directed was formed. There's a study by the General Accounting Office that documented that in New York City, when they did a colorblind, which means they did a needle prick of the heel of a newborn infant to test for various substances, you know, alcohol, every form of illicit substance, did those screenings, and then compared the samples by ethnicity, by income, by type of insurance, by type of hospital, whether it was private or public. There were no statistical differences in terms of children who were exposed to these substances at birth. Okay? So then why was it that the child welfare system, children removed from their homes and placed in foster care, didn't reflect that lack of difference? So that was when people became aware. Well, it's because who decides to report whom has a lot to do with the color of people's skin, how much money they have, and those types of phenomena. As was mentioned earlier, the sterilization abuse of women of color and poor women. And just want to not leave some of these things out. It was Puerto Rican women, about a third of Puerto Rican women sterilized during the 1970s. That includes on the island and on the mainland U.S. African American women and girls in North Carolina, 2 adolescent sisters who were who had developmental disabilities and whose mother could not was not literate to be properly informed to give consent for her daughters to be sterilized. And that case, you know, that became a significant case against sterilization, court case, because people had to fight with it, you know, in many, many ways. And more recently, we've discovered an entire hospital system in North Carolina that was conducting sterilizations. Mexican American women in California, with the consent of the doctors there, without the women's consent, but under the jurisdiction of